The story starts with our protagonist, Kim Chul-soo. He is a 23-year-old day laborer in South Korea, and he has a problem. He doesn't have a house. And in this world, being homeless means one of your feet is already in the grave. One day, an unknown man suddenly feels cold. He shivers and falls to the ground. People look at him with concerned faces. But then, suddenly, the man turns and transforms into a monster. A flesh-eating monster. A zombie. Suddenly, the man lunges at one of the people and starts violently mauling him to death. And so the infection spreads like wildfire. People are biting randomly. And so on, the entire district population becomes a horde of zombies. Chaos ensues as fast-moving zombies, like the ones from the train to Busan, suddenly overrun the Seoul metropolitan area. As the news spread, so did the infection rate. Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures HQ sends out multiple alerts as the newly identified epidemic named Madman disease rapidly transforms Seoul into a hostile environment. CDSCHQ advises everyone to refrain from making contact with other people, as they might be infected. Many people try to run away from the city as the infection grows. Many people try to seek shelter at a nearby temporary emergency refuge, but end up being food for the infected. And in just a couple of days, Seoul has fallen, and 30 million infected roam the streets of what was once South Korea's jewel city. The government couldn't prevent Seoul's demise, so instead, they tried to bandage the problem with a police blockade around Busan. Busan is 325 kilometers away from Seoul, and those that manage to get there will survive on government rations and supplies. However, as the day goes by, the supplies dwindle. There is simply not enough food and water for everyone to share. In Hyundai refugee village, people resorted to violence to take more than their share once the supplies were delivered. People are reduced to animals as they fight over what little they have. Even a kid is not safe from an adult taking his food. Compassion and empathy dissolve as soon as the situation gets worse. To prevent the people from descending into complete anarchy, the government orders the police to deal with the situation. And by dealing with the situation, it's the only way possible: police brutality. While 30 million zombies are slowly approaching the blockade and the survivors of the outbreak are fighting over supplies, the wealthy elites and their constituents enjoy a lavish lifestyle, going to parties and such. But to Chul-soo, the problem isn't that. It isn't the 30 million zombies, the descent into anarchy and the military state, or the government partying. It's the house price. Hyundai district's surviving residents are selling their houses for an absurd amount. A 105 square meter house costs 120.1 billion won. That's almost 92 million US dollars. Due to a mass migration of refugees, suddenly house prices are worth 100 times their normal prices. The hyperdeflation in the land market and hyperinflation in house prices go absolutely off the charts, making the Chinese house buying craze look like child's play. People who bought houses in 2008 will suddenly become Elon Musk or Bill Gates if they invest in a house in South Korea. Fiance, or the money deposit, a lump sum of the lease deposit instead of the monthly rent, is 47 times higher. An 80 square meter house costs 23.5 billion in fiance alone. The weekly or monthly rent for a 46 square meter private villa is 30 times more expensive. And since house prices are crazy, living comfortably is far from a dream for many. People become homeless, suffering from constant cold and hunger, which doesn't include the threat of the zombies outside. One moment, you could be freezing to death, the next time, you wake up as a flesh-eating zombie. But Chul-soo still wants a house, regardless. Looking through the district, he manages to find an advertisement for a house that costs almost 40 billion won, which is around 30 million US dollars. Just like many people in Hyundai, he is also a survivor of the outbreak, barely managing to flee the onslaught of the apocalypse. He thinks to himself that if he ever wants to buy a house, sleeping only the minimal amount of sleep of 2 hours and 30 minutes, it would take him at least 731 years to get 40 billion won. That's no way to earn money from his day job alone. And so he sets his sights on the billboard ad from a distance. Despite losing a lot of territory to the massive zombie hordes, the government is still trying to regain territory. Regaining territories is a massive pain, though, because they don't have enough manpower to dedicate to it. That's why they ask people to participate in such dangerous missions. The South Korean government offers a 5 million won reward for every zombie a person kills. That's almost $4,000 per confirmed kill. And Chul-soo sets out to join the territory reclamation mission. He even has to steal shovels from work because the train tickets are ridiculously overpriced. Chul-soo doesn't have a choice, so he finally caves in and chooses to do the dirty work. When he's about to board the train, however, he bumps into a woman, causing her to fall to the ground. The woman wears a gas mask, a techwear jacket, and a bag full of an expensive crossbow and bolts. One of the passengers tries to steal the woman's crossbow bolts, and then another drags her around, telling her she should be the bait for the mission. However, Chol-soo grabs the man and asks if he can just let it go, all before slapping him so hard that the man hits the nearest wall. Chol-soo tells the man that he can't concentrate on eliminating the zombies if there are people like him who are mixed with the crowd, people who take advantage of other people. And then he takes the crossbow for himself. He wanted to buy the crossbow before for this mission, but it was ridiculously expensive. Chol-soo thinks it's a lucky day that someone lends it to him because it would be good to have a long-range weapon for isolated kills. One of the military personnel asks what's going on, ready to intervene, but one of his squadmates tells him to leave them be. After all, the reclamation mission isn't really to regain territory. It's to cull the population, decreasing the mouths to feed by a large margin. If there are fewer people to think about, there are fewer problems. All the people rounded up for the reclamation operation aren't just random people, though. They are the poorest of the poor in all of Busan, so they have no choice either way. Would they rather die of starvation in the freezing weather or make a boatload of cash, risking being infected themselves? After a few hours, the reclamation group arrives at a remote location. People are wondering where the zombies and the military are. Everyone is confused as hell. They were supposed to arrive at Pohang Station, but they arrived at some random train station. And when everyone starts asking questions, a loud voice breaks their confusion. The announcer finally reveals the real goal of the operation: culling the population. Apparently, the best way to deal with the problem at hand is to kill the problem. Everything becomes extra chaotic as zombies begin to pour in waves and large numbers after being attracted to the loud noise. Some people beg the announcer to stop broadcasting as zombies are overrunning them. But it was too late for most of the people in there except for Chol-soo. He's not like most people. He gives the crossbow back to the woman, telling her the rate before going out to face thousands of zombies. 7,900 zombies, he said. He needs to kill almost 8,000 zombies to make a bank. And so he unsheathes his shovel and starts smashing heads. As soon as most people turn infected, zombies start attacking him. One of them lunges at him, but Chol-soo sends his head flying like some major league pro. He starts going on a violent rage, heads start rolling, body after body, chipping zombie horde all by himself. One of the zombies tackles him, but he stands back up, only to demolish most of them. He goes into full Shovel Knight mode as he slashes every head he sees, never even taking a break. As the sun rises, he sits atop the mountain pile of bodies he face-planted with his trusty shovel. The woman also survives the carnage and asks if Chol-soo is okay, but he shuts her down and tells her to count the bodies he killed. He needs that 79 kill count for the money. But the woman still asks why he's going so far as to annihilate an entire block of zombies, asking him if he's not afraid to die. Chol-soo answers bluntly, to get his own house with a yard if the money allows it, which is a very straightforward response and a relatively simple goal. Team 3 of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transport, which is monitoring the situation, is in shock. Around 8,000 kills in one go. After counting their kills, Chol-soo and the woman arrive at the Jijang district blockade, all soaked in blood and dirt. The military almost guns them down but realizes they are people who survived the onslaught. After being rescued, the Ministry of Land, Transport, and Maritime Affairs Team 3 leader offers Chol-soo his reward. 40 billion and 105 million won, that's $31 million in a single night. Probably hundreds of thousands of times higher than his daily wages. However, the Team 3 leader asks him to shut up about the TRO, or Territorial Regain Operation. They obviously don't want people to know they just sent hundreds of refugees to the meat grinder. One of the assistants of the team leader asks him if it's alright to give Chol-soo the money. After all, it is quite a sum that they don't normally give to people. But the team leader is wary of people like Chol-soo. If they don't give the money to him, he might end up going after them, except not really. This offer is a devious lie. After signing the waiver and taking the money, Chol-soo gives the woman her cut for lending the crossbow. He tells her not to follow him, and then he leaves. Chol-soo doesn't waste any time and goes to the house he's been eyeing for quite some time. After striking a deal with the old house owner, he sets foot inside, thinking he'll live happily in his newly bought home. Plot twist, he can't. After taking off his shoes, he goes barefoot inside and immediately steps on a nail infected with black blood. He realizes he's been set up from the start. The infection rapidly overtakes his body, and memories of his childhood flash before he turns. Apparently, the madman disease started a few years ago, given that Chol-soo was still a kid. He and his brother had to live together after getting separated from their parents during the evacuation period. His brother always wanted to buy a house because he thought their parents were still alive. Their parents could easily find them if they bought a house with their family nameplate. But this nostalgia is quickly cut off when the ministry arrives. The ministry doesn't slack off and brings a whole police force to capture him. The assistant raises concern about provoking Chol-soo, but the team leader is warier of a group called Slashers. The ministry team leader wants to take the infected Chol-soo away and confiscate his property in accordance with the law. For years, Chol-soo suffered a lot to get where he is right now. He survived being eaten by zombies. He had many labor-intensive jobs, and now the government is after him and his property. Chol-soo angrily declares that he wants to own a house, but the ultra-capitalist dystopian nightmare that is South Korea doesn't even allow him to dream. He angrily but tearfully asks why they are mean to him. As the infection takes over, Chol-soo lunges at one of the police officers and realizes he's infected, so he bites one of them. Like a cornered rat, except the rat is an extremely dangerous rat that killed 8,000 zombies. There is a saying that you should never drive a man to a corner because even a cornered rat is dangerous. And so the team leader orders his men to do just that. He tells them to drive Chol-soo into a corner because, in 3 minutes, he'll be brain dead, literally. He orders them to do it, otherwise they won't get paid. But Chol-soo stands up again, now completely a mix of human and zombie. He completely obliterates the entire police force sent to intercept him. As the team leader desperately loses his mind, a mysterious man in stylish attire appears. It's Choi and Jang Slasher Company, B-Class Slasher, and Hang Sang-soo. The team leader introduces himself as Kim Mun-shik, asking the man to save him. The man asks what to do with him, but a mysterious woman tells him to do what he has to do because the team leader is already a talking corpse. And so the man beheads the team leader. This mysterious woman is the same woman Kim met during the territorial regain operation. She is none other than the CEO of Choi and Jang Slasher Company, Choi Ah-jeong. Ah-jeong owns the prolific Slasher Company, which specializes in handling zombies. They are experts in the field, especially in horde clearing. But it's not just that. They can also do deliveries and item acquisition from an infested place. And because they are so good at what they do, hiring just one slasher ranges from 5.12 billion won to 300 billion won. That's $4 million up to $230 million per quest. After meeting with one of her clients, she immediately heads out to meet Chol-soo, who is currently turning into a zombie. After demolishing everyone, the two look at the zombified Chol-soo. She immediately sees his potential as a profitable investment because of how Chol-soo is resisting the infection on willpower alone. She thinks if Chol-soo becomes a slasher, he could fetch a high price in the market. Ah-jeong asks him if he wants to live, but Chol-soo is already losing himself to the infection. So Ah-jeong formally introduces the concept of slashers to him. She was a survivor of the first territorial regain operation and managed to become a leading figure among the slashers. She tells Kim that being a slasher is a job only the chosen can do. And by chosen ones, she means someone who is really good at killing zombies. Plus, it's a high-paying job because commission requests literally come from high-ranking elites, Fortune 500 companies, local warlords, and even politicians. The job availability is endless, and it's literally a job that can turn a poor person into an elite overnight. Ah-jeong pulls out a cure and tells him she'll give it to him if he wants to live, but he'll have to pay for it by becoming a slasher, and so Chol-soo accepts the offer. After a few hours, Chol-soo regains consciousness. He wakes up in a taxi as the driver asks if he remembers Ah-jeong. But everything is so fuzzy, he can't remember anything after the infection. So he directs him to watch the YouTube video instead. Choi Ah-jeong introduces herself as the instructor, telling him all the essential information about being a slasher and everything that comes with being one. She also explains how being a slasher pays more because of the lack of manpower from the government's resources. That's also part of the reason why there's a territorial recapture operation. But it was mostly misused to kill the citizens instead. However, those people who can kill zombie hordes like god-tier melee pros on any Project Zomboid server become slashers. And Chol-soo is part of the industry now, all because he's suddenly in debt. The cure that Ah-jeong used to turn him back into a human isn't cheap. It's 500 billion won, or almost $400 million. That's almost 10 times the price of his house. And so Chol-soo will have to slave away as Ah-jeong's personal slasher and slave. Mr. Choi, a Class D driver, tells Chol-soo that he needs to go to downtown Jeonju to retrieve a hard disk drive. Despite finding the video nonsense and a complete waste of time, Chol-soo quickly understands his situation. He's still alive, after all. The reason he's on the blockade is because he hates zombies. But he hated poverty more than anything else. He broke the blockade to become rich. But now he's forced to back out of it because of his debt. It makes him think about his situation. And he has to do what he's got to do. There's not much of a choice for a broke person. So he starts slashing his way through hordes upon hordes of zombies. Chol-soo is so angry. But he can't really do anything about his whole situation. So he just takes it out on the zombies, killing them one by one. Except now he's got the motivation. He wants to threaten Ah Jeong and cut her down if she doesn't remove the IOU. IOU is just a term for IOU, and is a written, but largely informal, acknowledgement that a debt exists between two parties and the amount the borrower owes the lender. But he can't do that if he can't find his way back to Busan. And so he just proceeds to complete his mission. Chol-soo plans to pretend to be obedient to threaten Ah Jeong to dissolve the IOU. Unbeknownst to him, an unknown attacker throws a slab of meat at his driver. The meat has an alarm that attracts all the zombies in the area, eventually killing the driver. Meanwhile, Chol-soo finds himself in a predicament. As an elementary school dropout, he didn't know what a hard disk was, so instead of looking for a specific one, he just bagged all of them. Chol-soo tries to call the driver, but he is already overwhelmed by zombies and the dead. At the site, a man named Park Sang-chul recovers the phone to set another alarm. He was a former Class C slasher from Choi and Jang Company. Nicknamed the Phantom, Sang-chul deserted Choi and Jang to become a hunter. Instead of hunting zombies, he hunts humans. He quit the company after some time because of the low commission fees he received for his work. Apparently, he's not really making that much of a killing at work, literally. Ah Jeong tells him to do more dangerous work if he wants to earn more money instead of piggybacking off joint missions involving other slashers. But because he isn't really capable of rising above his previous rank, he quits and decides to go solo. He swears that he will take revenge on Ah Jeong by disrupting their missions and selling the commissioned items. After getting out of the hellhole that is in the computer room, Chol-soo gets hit by a slab of meat. The alarm rings, and hordes of zombies start to swarm him. But Chol-soo quickly decimates the horde, killing everyone for good. Sang-chul was hoping to use him as a distraction to find the commissioned items, but Chol-soo was so good at killing zombies that he didn't have the time to rummage through the bags. Sang-chul witnesses for himself how much of a monster Chol-soo is. He thinks Chol-soo will eventually get tired, so he throws another slab of meat. But Chol-soo finally sees him, swearing he'll kill him soon. Sang-chul throws every bit of bait he has at Chol-soo, hoping that the swarm of zombies will kill him or at least keep him busy. But it only angers Chol-soo more, which in turn makes him more focused on killing. Sang-chul tries to run away but can't because Chol-soo throws an infected shovel at him. But Sang-chul still has an ace up his sleeves, or rather, his chemical suit. He powers up the amusement park, just like in Zombieland, attracting thousands, if not hundreds, of zombies in the vicinity. However, an old man in fishing attire arrives and asks who Seomyun's shovel is. The pre-recorded announcer's voice interrupts him, so the old man swipes the speaker with his fishing rod. But this guy is no mere old man. He is a Class A slasher, Kim Chil-sam, with a kill count of 112,700 zombies. Chil-sam, nicknamed Old Man, was commissioned by Ah Jeong to help save Chol-soo. Instead of asking for the reward, though, he asked for something else, the cure worth 300 billion won. He knows that Ah Jeong's request is urgent, and she's not really in a position to negotiate her terms anyway. So the old man proposed the deal. And now he's doing the part. The old man immediately recognizes Chol-soo's body features. He knows that the man is rough around the edges but knows his way around the world to survive. When asked by Chol-soo, old man introduces himself as someone Chol-soo could call a teacher. But their meeting is cut short when hordes of zombies start to swarm their positions. And so the old man unleashes his weapon. He puts the bait on and swings his rod like a master fisherman. And waits a little bit. Patience is the key to being a good fisherman. But in this case, it's about killing zombies. He signals Chol-soo to get down and immediately pulls the rod, reeling in thousands of zombies' heads in one go. A swing that kills thousands. A risky yet very efficient move. It's not even physically possible, but who cares? It's cool as hell. Even Chol-soo is awestruck. This old man, who looks like he doesn't do much, actually does. One attack reels in billions of dollars. He's definitely up the ladder. However, Sang-chul immediately interrupts them. A now mutated Sang-chul stands up and looks like the tank from Left 4 Dead. But for some reason, he still retains his sanity and rationality. Sang-chul tells them he's still here, but all rationality flies out of the window when he hears the old man saying, "Class C, you see?" He's still triggered. He can't get out of Class C hell, and now he's about to kill old man for that. The old man recognizes the condition and tells the curious Chol-Su that Sang-Chul is a rare case with a certain probability among zombies. He's a mutant, and mutations happen now and then among infected people. With 30 million zombies roaming around Seoul's and Busan's borders, there may be thousands of these mutants. Anyway, the mutant Sang-Chul dashes and punches old man, sending him flying. He tells the old man he hates him as well as Chol-Su. They're the worst examples of people he can't get past, and he hates people who accomplish something he couldn't. He tearfully declares he will kill both of them before he succumbs to zombification. As Sang-Chul's about to hit Chol-Su, his large and muscular arm suddenly gets cut off for some reason. The old man recognizes Sang-Chul. He fondly remembers him as the Phantom, a cowardly kid who piggybacks off of someone else's work, like snatching a bunch of jewelry, among other things. Apparently, he's not even fighting zombies. He's just hiding in a corner and looking for stuff to take back home. The old man calls him an ungrateful moron, which triggers Sang-Chul. Sang-Chul attacks the old man, but he's already dead. The old man slices through his upper torso with ease, effectively killing him in one go. He then tells Chol-Su that even if someone ever calls him, he's just someone who kills zombies, who were once humans, for money. He doesn't need to be a monster, just like what happened to Sang-Chul. After the fight, the old man tells Chol-Su to follow him. A few years ago, Taegong used to fish a lot. When the outbreak started, he was not in the city, so he didn't know what happened until his daughter, Yejeong, called him in distress. He was fishing peacefully in the countryside when things started to go down. Arriving at Taegong's place, Chol-Su expected a bigger house. After all, old man seems to make a killing in his job as a slasher, and he's exceptionally skilled at it as well. He did not expect such a small house. After their dinner, Chol-Su asks Taegong what he spent his money on. He's curious because Taegong's frugal and modest lifestyle doesn't seem to fit the type of house he owns. Taegong seems to spend things on something entirely different, which piques Chol-Su's interest. He noticed a lot of things, like the outdoor bathroom and food of choice, and so Taegong tells him that he'll understand it when he sees it. He opens a locker with the cure syringes inside. The reason he's a slasher is to save up a cure to turn his family back into humans. One of them is his precious daughter. Earlier, Chol-Su asked old man who he is and how he can become someone like Taegong, an excellent and efficient zombie killer. Taegong laughs at Chol-Su's curiosity but gives him a bit of coherent advice. He tells Chol-Su that whether he's someone who lived comfortably during the mad disease outbreak or someone who barely managed to escape the apocalypse as a homeless person, one way or another, there's something that has been stolen from each of them. He believes that someone who is entirely determined to take that stolen thing back comes back stronger and receives the respect of others. Taegong asks Chol-Su what was stolen from him. Chol-Su ponders, what was the thing that was stolen from him? There were a lot of things that the epidemic stole from him. His parents were either dead or alive as zombies when they initially separated, probably close to 10 years ago. His childhood was stolen as well. Instead of going to school and enjoying the perks of being educated like every other child, he has to work intensively as a child worker to survive this wretched world. His friends were reduced to nothing but mindless zombies, who now roam the streets of their childhood home. His brother was also killed while trying to earn money for both of them so they could afford a house. There are a lot of things that the epidemic robbed him of, and talking to Taegong made him realize how much he had lost. But Taegong tells him that if a lot of things are stolen from him, he just needs to know what he needs to take back first. And in Chol-Su's case, it's his newly bought house. But Ah-Jeong breaks the reality for him and tells him she sees the house as collateral. She spent at least 800 billion won, which is $612 million, just to bring Chol-Su back. But of course, Chol-Su cannot appreciate this. He didn't ask to be turned back into a human, only to slave away for the rest of his life. Chol-Su almost loses it all and hits Ah-Jeong, but Taegong stops him. Taegong is still subject to Ah-Jeong, and Chol-Su immediately recognizes Taegong's threat, so he stops. But Chol-Su is still angry that his house was stolen from him, so Taegong tells him to just repay the debt by working hard. There are a lot of things that Chol-Su can do, and he can do more than just kill zombies. He offers his help. After all, he told Chol-Su he'd mentor him, and so Chol-Su swears that the day he takes back his house, he'll beat Ah-Jeong half to death. Ah-Jeong tells him to do just that because the company might go broke sooner or later because of him. She then gives Taegong the cure, just as promised. Despite being optimistic about Chol-Su's potential, Ah-Jeong wants to confirm if Taegong can mentor and teach Chol-Su, but Taegong assures him he can do just that. Chol-Su just needs a little bit of training. She then informs Taegong that there will be a slasher party the next day, and he needs to bring Chol-soo with him so that at least Chol-soo will know more about the slasher world and how it runs. After the talk, Taegong offers his house as a temporary place to stay for Chol-soo until he can retrieve his own house after paying his debts. Curious about the party, Chol-soo asks about the slasher get-together, so Taegong tells him more about it. According to Taegong, zombie butchers, or slashers, are ranked based on kills. There are 4 classes, ranging from A to D. Rank D is the lowest, with a minimum of 100 kills. Rank C is the third, which requires a minimum of 5,000 kills. Next is Rank B, requiring a 30,000 plus kill count. And lastly, Class A requires a staggering 100,000 confirmed kills or more. Only the best of the best slashers are considered Class A, and the slasher get-together is where all these crazy bastards gather in one place. Taegong says that the less formal someone wears, the crazier they are. Dressing formally is just a way to blend in and be less of a target for these crazy people. A few minutes later, the driver arrives. As soon as Taegong enters the vehicle, the driver closes the door, telling Chol-soo that the car is reserved only for the old man. However, Chol-soo insists on getting in. That's when the driver finally tells him to stop and wait for his own operator. The driver tells Chol-soo there's something called power in their world, which is something that Chol-soo clearly lacks. The disparity is as clear as day. Apparently, this driver is Taegong's exclusive Class A operator, Jo Chang-gi. After telling him off, Chang-gi and Taegong leave for the party. But a few minutes later, his ride arrives. The woman introduces herself as Min-ari, who will be Chol-soo's operator moving forward. After the collapse of Korea and the rise of slashers, a system was established for it to be profitable. The slasher operator combo. A slasher is only good for killing zombies when the company deems it so. Of course, someone who is good at killing zombies is still practically useless when it comes to paperwork. That's where the operators come in. Operational planning, tool reinforcement, expedition team, financial costs, accounting, training, and more are handled by the operators. It works like how talent managers handle their artists, or how coaches handle their athletes. An operator's job is to handle things that don't involve killing zombies. Min-ari is a Class C operator assigned by Ah Jeong herself to Chol-soo. Before becoming the CEO of the slasher company, Ah Jeong herself joined as an operator. After rising as a Class A operator and surviving the first territorial regain operation, she becomes its representative. Despite exclusively handling Chol-soo herself, she also manages her other 44 slashers. She sees potential in Min-ari, just like she saw with Chol-soo, so she assigns Ari to handle Chol-soo. After their short trip to the 5-star hotel beach, Taegong and several prominent slashers arrive at the gathering at the same time. There are notable Class A slashers at the entrance, like Jang Duke-chol with 100,000 confirmed kills. Park Chun-sik, another Class A slasher, has over 100,000 kills. There is another peculiar slasher with no confirmed kills but who is Ministry of Defense Class A slasher, Im Kwang-teek. Small business Class A slasher, Han Young-hwa. And, of course, the old man himself, Taegong. These premium Class A slashers are some of the most notable and strongest of their types in the slasher hierarchy. Arriving a few minutes later, Chol-soo and Ari arrive together. Upon seeing them, the attendance clerk immediately asks whether they're slashers or VIPs. Ari explains that they're slasher operators, but the clerk says they're not on the list, and so he asks for a class instead. Ari explains that Chol-soo is still a Class C slasher, but the clerk cuts her off before she can tell Ah Jeong she invited him. He states that only students in Class B or higher are invited and are part of the party, telling them that Class C isn't part of the experience. But Ah Jeong arrives just in time to intervene, stating that she invited them. The clerk hesitantly tells her that they are upholding a certain level of class, so letting an inexperienced rookie in might damage their reputation. But Ah Jeong tells him about Chol-soo's exploit, explaining how he managed to skip Class D straight to Class C in a single night. She also tells him that Chol-soo is her new toy. Chol-soo's exploits are making the rounds among the customers inside, who are eager to see how capable he is. After some mild threatening, the clerk allows them to enter. Chol-soo immediately feels that everyone's just playing around because they're rich. But Ari explains that the people inside the building aren't just wealthy elites for fun. They all have at least 30,000 kills under their belt, and they're not screwing around. Class B and up operators are also on the run here, as this gathering isn't just for a grand and lavish party but also for the business. Many people are looking forward to meeting exceptionally talented slashers and operators to do business. And speaking of business, VIPs like Ah Jeong are also looking for new ventures to expand their company's revenue through business deals conducted after the party. There is much money to be made just by meeting new people and building connections. It's just an offline LinkedIn party for slashers and venture companies. After all, slasher companies were the most prolific businesses following the downfall of Korea. Ari knows how the business works in these parts, and she's telling Chol-soo that no matter what he sees or how disgusting or twisted it is, he needs to behave and maintain his work ethic. He's a professional, after all. Chol-soo tells Ari not to worry. He was a refugee, after all. It's business as usual for him, except not really. Despite living as a refugee for years, Chol-soo is still a delicate man who is not fond of many things. He suffered the hardships of being the poorest of the poor. But there's just something that irks him so much about this extravagant party. Rich elites were throwing food around like it was nothing. The complete lack of humanity from people is like asking for the retrieval of a wife's thumb for a business venture. And probably the most disgusting of all, selling previous humans as a luxury item. The Deukjol Association announces they're selling a famous actress, an idol, and a model, all previous humans who turned into mindless zombies, as auction items. Chol-soo cannot stomach such things and walks up to the front. In a rather surprising act, he beheads the zombies, killing them instantly. This shocks everyone. He picks up the mic and asks everyone if they're all nothing but crazy and disgusting pricks. Chol-soo draws the line when he's had enough. He thinks using former humans as trade items for entertainment is not okay. He questions the sanity and professionalism of people to do such vile acts. That's borderline inhumane. Ari immediately goes into action and tells him to come down before things go down. But one of the slashers asks him a question. What if that's the way we make money? It's the class of slasher, Jang Deukjol. He confronts Chol-soo and asks him the question. Jang Deukjol is a prominent slasher and the owner of the Deukjol Association. Compared to Choi and Young, Deukjol Association is a much smaller company with only a few class of slashers. But unlike Choi and Jang, which acts like a company, Deukjol Association is some sort of company run by gangsters. Just a few years ago, a reporter wrote an article about Deukjol being a gangster who pretends to be an entrepreneur. Deukjol Association is a rising slasher company, but their business dealings can be considered shady. That single article alone costs them 1.2 trillion won, which is close to $1 billion US. Hearing the calculations from his analyst, he orders his men to capture the reporter and his family. Instead of using intimidation tactics, like normal gangsters would, he uses far more severe punishment. He injected a syringe infected with black blood into the reporter, effectively giving him a death sentence as a zombie. Deukjol explains that he's not angry. He called him a gangster in his article. He's angry that he lost almost $1.2 trillion on that article alone. He exemplifies the reporter, putting his own family in front of him for a family dinner. To make a point, he asks his men to take a photo of the incident the next day and use it to threaten the news writers. Despite his looks, Deukjol is a calculative person. When faced with people with the same physical features as him, many people would categorize him as someone who's only good at fighting. But Deukjol is as smart as he is deadly. When Ari sees him in action, she immediately tells him to calm down, only to be met with his palm. He then asks the same question again. This time, Chol-soo answers him, telling Deukjol that by going to extreme lengths, such as selling zombies, they might as well be zombies themselves if they're acting worse than animals. He immediately follows up with a blade slash from his butcher's knife, but Deukjol stops the knife and crushes it before pummeling Chol-soo down. The blow is absolutely devastating. Chol-soo feels his arms are broken already. Deukjol then follows up with a swift kick that knocks out Chol-soo instantly. His analyst immediately calculates the damages incurred, and Chol-soo has another debt he doesn't know about, ramping up that financial freedom to absolute zero. Deukjol wants to make an example of him by killing him, but Tae-gong threatens to cut his head off. And then Ah Jeong appears. She asks if Deukjol has 800 billion won in his pocket to kill Chol-soo. Chol-soo is worth 800 billion, and by extension, if he dies, the killer has to pay her his worth. She's got no problem with Deukjol killing Chol-soo, so long as he can pay Chol-soo's debt. Of course, hearing Chol-soo is worth 800 billion won is already absurd. But to pay 800 billion won for killing him, it's beyond absurd. He simply cannot be a rookie slasher at that and be worth 800 billion won. He is a calculative man, and by this calculation, Chol-soo is off their numbers for a man he thinks is just a stray dog. So Ah Jeong shows him the proof. The document shocks Deukjol. Deukjol is in denial and cannot believe it himself. Ah Jeong tells him that it's only natural to take the money from the killer if the debtor dies. She dares Deukjol to kill Chol-soo if he and the Deukjol Association can write an $812 billion check. She says it's easier that way since she doesn't need to wait any longer for Chol-soo to pay his debts. Dyuk-chul throws a fit and asks her if she thinks he can't pay her with that absurd amount of money. He thinks that if he doesn't kill Chol-soo right now, he and his company will lose face, like a coward or something. But 800 billion is something they can just hand over to someone over a worthless scum like Chol-soo. Seeing his predicament, Ah-jeong can't help but laugh. Dyuk-chul takes this as an insult and raises her head. But Ah-jeong's slashers are quick to respond. And so Dyuk-chul swears that when his company gets bigger, he'll kill Ah-jeong for good. After threatening Ah-jeong, the Dyuk-chul Association leaves altogether. Ah-jeong orders her assistant to ensure that Ari and Chol-soo are treated at a nearby hospital while also ensuring that event organizers know she will compensate them for the damages incurred. She also cancelled slasher scouting and the scheduled VIP entertainment shows. The commotion really ruined her mood for the worse. After settling everything, she leaves with her company team following behind. Chol-soo's statements earlier reminded Ah-jeong of someone she knew before. A few years ago, Ah-jeong was one of the first survivors of the first territorial regain operation. After surviving the operation, Jang Soo-ho, another one of the survivors, asked Ah-jeong to start a company with him. The company was tailor-made for professionals who hunt zombies and make money out of it. It's a very simple and straightforward proposal. Jang Soo-ho was the very first slasher. He's considered an S-class slasher with countless zombie kills under his belt. And so the concept of the slasher operator was born. It is unknown whether Soo-ho is alive or not. Chol-soo wakes up in a hospital bed a few hours after the incident. Next to him is Min Ari, who sustained minor injuries. He apologizes for dragging her into his situation. But Ari tells him not to apologize because it's her fault she couldn't manage Dyuk-chul, and Chol-soo's mentality enough to pacify them both. Chol-soo opens up and tells them he can't endure the insanity he witnessed at the party. He said ordinary people, who are busy fighting for their own survival, wouldn't even know that somewhere in the city, the zombies they are most afraid of are being sold as luxury items for some elite's entertainment. He asks Ari if they are no different from the party's animals. And so Ari explains that two things determine a person's worth in the slasher world. One is their ability to kill zombies. The other is turning zombies into money. Right now, Chol-soo has neither of them. He lost to Dyuk-chul in the first place because of his lack of ability and wealth. Those two things make a person like Dyuk-chul, and they can't do anything because they lack those two things in the first place. She tells Chol-soo that the best they can do is wait and see. But Ari tells Chol-soo that he's not the only one who thinks the world is descending into madness. A few years ago, Ari's sister was also auctioned off like the zombies from the party. She can't do anything but cry instead. So Ari tells him that if he wants to see a world where his idea of justice reigns, Chol-soo needs to grow in ability and wealth. He needs to wield the power he hates to bring forth the justice he desires. Hearing this, Chol-soo is now motivated to kill more zombies. And so Ari tells him he'll get him work next week. However, upon arriving at their headquarters, Ah-jeong tells her there is no work. That little act at the party costs the company a lot. Dyuk-chul sabotages Chol-soo's commissions and sweeps all the work by making a bad rep for Choi and Jang Company. And so the corporate wars start. The video ends here. Watch the next video.